What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Canescast. I'm Phil Van Pelt, contributing writer for Yardbarker and one half of the Canescast duo here. Garrett, how you feeling today? I know we're excited. Canes sitting at 3-0 and got a lot to talk about as far as nothing really, I guess, intense game wise, but performance wise, obviously we knew we would take care of businesses against Bethune, and the expectation is we're going to do the same thing up at Temple. But how are you feeling so far after 3 weeks of pretty good football?
Well, thanks, Phil. Yeah, Garrett Halsey here, guys, back with you. This week, as far as what we expected Saturday, pretty much all played out. Know, it's one of those games that you get backups in. Guys that are second, third string might not play a whole lot. That was what was really kind of interesting was those guys really came in, got some experience. You want to see them play to the level of the potential. A lot of these guys were 4 or 5 star recruits, let's say this year. So that's what's exciting. Getting guys like Chris Johnson. Him getting out there to show off his skill set was probably one of the most exciting things in the game that we just saw. And then going into the game here against Temple, it's not that we're you we certainly feel good about how we should play against Temple. But again, having gone through the season that we went through last year, and if you would have told me you had a crystal ball, and we would have, had a real letdown after our game that we had lost a tough game against Texas A&M last year. I don't want to take anything for granted. Still, I still think the team has something to prove in every single game. If it's nothing else more than that, we won't play down to the competition this year. These first 4 games, the second one was certainly the tough one. The 3 other ones was more about getting experience, refining your new offense, your new defense, getting guys ready to contribute because there will be tough games. There is certainly with the ACC schedule, the whole not quite whole second half because there's eight ACC games. There's gonna be tough games, so this is important to get these guys in this game again. Hopefully, I'd like to see at least a half of play for the starters if we're out to a comfortable lead. I want to see more of Chris Johnson. I want to see more of Jaden Wayne, who looks amazing. Really, I really like what we're seeing on some of these freshmen. Getting the guy like Matt McCoy in, who actually kind of came in and spelled Javian Cohen in the game here against Bethune Cookman. Played with the first team line. I thought he looked really good. Samson Unkaloa, the Pancake Honcho. Getting these guys playing time is super important one, and it's exciting when they go out there and they play well. So, we had 9 drives on offense at Bethune Cookman, and I think we scored 7 touchdowns. So that's almost as efficient as it can get. We didn't have any kick returns or defensive touchdowns, but those looked good either way. The one thing you could say was I hope that Colby Young got his bad game, out of the way. He had a drop, then he had the fumble going into the end zone there. With Jacoby George having a great game against Texas A&M, he had 3 touchdowns, but he had some tough points in the game. You like to see some of these hiccups get out of the way with these guys that we're really going to rely on heavily for the rest of the season.
Yeah, the nice part about mistakes are they definitely help you refocus. And I think that having those miscues, while everybody wants to see in a perfect world a game that is just, it's perfect. Every drive ends in a touchdown. Every defensive, stand is 3 and out, forcing turnovers, just the perfect game that you kind of, more or less get away with against lower competition like that when you're playing the Bethune Cookman. But I did feel like at points maybe in this game, the Canes weren't as aggressive as they could be. Texting, we mentioned the relationship of their head coach and obviously Cristobal knowing each other. And maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know that it did. I personally, you would have thought at the beginning that we would have won by more points. You would have hung more points on there last year, hanging 70 on them. This year, especially, as many guys got to play is pretty cool. I mean, we're talking about guys, I think in the 70s. amount of players that played. I mean, it was a real depth game, which is awesome. We talked about on the surface too. It's a video game number type game, a chance for guys to put up big stats, but also for the team to see these reps where, you never know who's going to need to see who's going to get playing time down the road from an injury or just because they've earned that position to come in and spell somebody some minutes, and all these reps matter for these guys. So it's good to see that. Like you mentioned, Colby Young, hopefully that's out of the way. We could have fumbled 12 times in this game, and maybe that's an exaggeration, but it shouldn't have affected the outcome of the game at that point. So when you do something like that in a game like this, it's you know, null and void, doesn't matter, but you don't want to see that. It sucks because that did change the spread. I mean, that's 2 touchdowns on the same drive. Well, a touchdown, 2 chances at a touchdown for Colby Young on the same drive that cost us points, and if that happens in a game like Texas A&M, which we saw with the muff punt and the block punt, it can almost cost you the game. Obviously, we swung that door the other way and stormed through it and ended up winning pretty handily. And you look back, and if those don't happen, we win even, by a wider margin. But in a lot of games, it can make it close. And the proof to me is right there last week. On Saturday, I know we got our game out of the way Thursday, so we had an easy watch through Saturday, and there wasn't a lot of huge games. This past weekend, I don't think any ranked teams played each other, which is pretty unbelievable considering there's always one ranked, 2 ranked teams that are going to get, head to head on some level. You think every weekend. Obviously, the Colorado State game ended up being very good. But the Florida State game, Boston College is not good from what we know. Maybe they end up rebounding and having a better season. But to take Florida State, I know they were at home, but to take them and push them the way they did with, like we spoke about, 18 penalties. I don't know if that's just a perfect storm of getting away and losing a game that they should have won. Boston College had that game dead to rights on many occasions and still had 18 penalties. So what does that say? I don't really know. Was Florida State really just overlooking them? The whole point of this is there's going to be games that we're in a dogfight, like you mentioned. The expectation of everybody in front of us is beatable is there. It's true. It's realistic. We look at the schedule and think there's no reason why Canes can't win every game on the schedule. And most years you feel that way as fans, obviously. The bias is going to be there, but removing that bias, Canes have always had talent. It's putting it together to make it work. Right. So now we're looking at a position of like, okay, this is here. We're comfortable with the offensive line, the defensive line. It's feels less fluky. I don't want to say that 2017 was a fluke looking back, but everything kind of worked perfectly. A perfect storm of turnovers and everything else that drove that team in the right direction. 2020 was another good year. But we had explosive playmaking at quarterback with De'Aaron King, running around. You couldn't really stop that. He brought an aspect to Miami offense that we have nearly never seen have a quarter. We've never really had a quarterback run around like that. So this feels like
I do want to say, Phil,
built the right
maybe
way.
just to touch. Sorry, buddy. I do want to touch on something because it will certainly help us out going forward. Because, like you said, in that Florida State game, one of the key components was that quarterback that could run. He had a lot of passing yards, but there was really, really important plays where one, they were really controlling the line of scrimmage on the offensive side. So that one, gives me hope that when we play Florida State, we can do that. But Tyler Van Dyke looked really good running the ball against Bethune Cookman. That's something I would like. Obviously, we've talked about this in the show. This is why, Jakar Brown's not our quarterback at this moment in time. But Tyler Van Dyke did show some fleet of foot. He kept the ball finally. I've been screaming for that for almost 2 years now, I feel like. So he scored a touchdown with his legs, but it was a play earlier in that drive too that he kept the ball, went around the outside, and he looked good doing that. I think that was important. I don't say we don't want to run the offense that way necessarily. I don't think he needs 10, 15 runs. But when those yards are there and in tough games, him having that ability and showing that ability was actually really, really encouraging from the game.
No, and I mean, I've pointed at it, his first start against Virginia as a freshman, when he took that ball at the sideline, 30 yards, whatever it was, and scored, showed that he has wheels. It's the willingness to do that. It's when he will, and how he does it. To me, for a guy like Van Dyke, he's not going to be the fastest guy on the field in any game, and we know that he's always going to have one of the most talented arms, right? On whoever's playing quarterback, that's his thing, right? The guy can sling it all over the field, and we know what talent level he is, and that's when we do have this discussion about running quarterbacks versus not. Running needs to be a part of your game. I listen to this, through big time talk shows and everything else. And I agree with points that are being made where it needs to be, forgetting who said it, but it needs to be the Greg Olson actually made this. They brought it up on these talk shows, but Greg Olson was the one who actually made the point. It needs to be part of your arsenal, but it can't be your go-to pitch. Basically, if you're running around all the time, you're going to get caught. That provides big play opportunities, but it also leads to turnovers and a lot of sacks running around like that. So Van Dyke, though, my point is he's not the fastest guy in the world. So there's times where we've watched him go to take off and it ends up being a yard or just back to the line of scrimmage because it's like, wait, go. And instead of that, wait, maybe it's wait, go. Just as far as that pacing, because against Bethune Cookman, yeah, right. The talent level isn't there, and maybe the overall discipline on defense isn't there. When you play this higher level competition, it's those lanes close quickly. So if it's there, he needs to take it. And I agree, make up his mind. But I agree that having him do that a couple times a game, even if it doesn't have to be designed. Just if there's a lane, take it, go get the first down. It keeps the defense honest enough because it's like, wait, he did that. He's put it on film. He might do that, which is only going to help his ability to get the ball wherever he needs to put it. And okay, wait, now we got to watch him again. It just is going to give the defense one more thing to think about with a passing attack and a rushing attack that are, some of the top in the NCAA right now. We're 6th in passing yards per attempt, so we're putting pressure on the defense. We have the 37th ranked rushing attack in the NCAA right now. So obviously it's a very balanced, aggressive attack. We've given up 4 sacks on the season, which is not bad at all. There's a lot to be excited about, but I agree. If he does that, in moments in big games, though, I think it needs to be a split decision because yes, he will break tackles and, he has the ability to and get away and get yards. We've seen too many times where it's tripped up. Oh, come on, we're right there. We're watching other guys break out of sacks against us and we're losing our minds. He can do it. I just think, again, like you said, space it. And if he's going to go, he just needs to make up his mind and go. Now, none of this means anything because he's going to do what he's going to do. But the arm talent is there for him to win a lot of games for us. I'm excited for it. You're excited for it. And I'm excited to get into ACC play. We talked about what this season could look like. We didn't want to say anything. Now we're looking at 5-0 seems like a pretty good certainty. Obviously, we got to take care of business on the road at Temple. Our first road game, which is interesting to me. I think that's the first kind of it's just another test. Every game we've had has been at home. Last year, I think we won 4 of our last 5 on the road, or it's probably about that. So we did well on the road last year.
I think we only won one home game. It was a bad year at home, but
I think
I think we actually did pretty good.
One or two. Yeah, you're
better
right.
on the road.
We did. We played well on the road, but we're 9 according to the ESPN analytics, which never really matter, to a huge degree. These games they do because we're such heavy favorites, 95% to 5%. I think we're 25-point favorites. So yeah, like you said, I want to see us cover. I want to see us be crisp. I want to see us continue to gel as an offense. Win by a big enough margin, so covering, right, where it's not going to hurt you. In the rankings where a game like this isn't going to move us up. We did move up after Bethune, but that's also a product of other things happening on some level too, because a win over Bethune isn't overly impressive. But you just, it's the same thing when Ohio State and these teams beat up on these small schools. They're not impressive wins. It's just winning by enough to show that, you're the team that you are, that people think you are, and you should be. So Temple's a bigger test. Winning on the road, I think, has the ability to move us up a spot or two if we win really handily, depending on what else happens. But that's what I want to see. First and foremost, injury-free, please. We don't want to lose any guys like this. Like you said, get the starters some play in the first half, and build upon what we saw against Bethune, because for all intents and purposes, there's no reason why we can't win by the same margin. We didn't win by as big of a margin, I think, as we all thought we would have against Bethune. A lot of backups playing is that cohesiveness with all these 3rd, 4th, 5th string guys that are getting in the game, as well as maybe some lack of aggressiveness at that point of the game. Maybe we hung 48 points on them and Texas A&M. So what do you think? We could do the same thing to Temple. Let's do it and come out injury free. That's all I'm looking forward to. Just seeing a crisp performance that, and hopefully Colby Young, makes up for that performance, and scores a couple touchdowns. I think that would be cool. Get his mind right before not that there's anything wrong, but, right the wrongs from the last game into the next part of the season.
So one other fun tidbit is that I was reading an article today that Tyler Van Dyke was actually his family was season ticket holders for the Philadelphia Eagles. So he, getting the chance to come back to a field that he's been to as a kid growing up, I got to imagine that before he knew he was going to Miami, he certainly looked down on that field and felt, gosh, I wish I could be on that field someday. So that's a really cool little storyline. I expect him to have that, that little chip on his shoulder. Maybe it's not the right word, but have him, he's going to have some family and friends down there in this game. So playing well in front of, a comfortable setting. I know he caught himself when I saw it in the post game presser or something like that. Something about he likes going to play on the road because he said this last year and everyone kind of jumped on him. He has played really well at home this year. So him, kind of living up to the billing of getting to play at his home stadium, if you want to say, because he's from Connecticut, upscale Connecticut. That's kind of a cool little storyline. Also, on the other sideline is, Kurt Warner's son is their quarterback that we're going to be facing. And as we've talked in the past shows, that this is oftentimes one of those games where a legacy or some guy comes out and just has a game of his life. So certainly looking forward to that not being the case and not putting Kurt Warner's son on the trajectory of superstardom. Hopefully he has, a tough game. I think our defense will bring a physicalness to this game that it's hopefully something he hasn't seen. They beat Akron pretty by a slim margin. I think it was in overtime. I think the game they won handily was Norfolk State, if I remember right. And then their other game they lost pretty substantially to Rutgers. And most people have kind of, I think, the same opinion that Rutgers isn't a superstar team, but they won pretty handily against Temple. So that's why I think going into this game, most of the speak is that people aren't really looking at this as supposed to be a tough game. But that's where, again, I'm not certainly going to predict Temple win because I'll throw my prediction out here. I think Miami is certainly capable. We're putting up about 45 points a game. I think something in that average. I think we're only giving up something like 14 points a game, some 15 points a game. We have really good enough games that you can kind of start to see averages. I would expect to see something around the average. Well, I'll say a 45 to, or what's a real score, 42 to 14 game, right? So that's my prediction for this game. I do believe we have all the talent. Things have been going the right way. But for all goodness and purposes, let's not slip up and let this derail a good start to the season. I don't expect that. It doesn't seem like that's the kind of team we have this year. But football is football. Let's not take anything for granted. Let's treat hopefully every team comes in we on the schedule. We play hard, play to our ability. And that's what certainly we want to see, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that slipping up in a game like this, I just think enough lessons were learned from the catastrophe that was last year, watching the season go off the rails in the dramatic fashion, the slow motion train wreck that year was for all of us to watch, that, so much has changed. Like we talked about with guys returning, guys that have joined the program, guys returning from injury, just guys that were, jettisoned out, either kind of maybe shown the door or chose to leave. There's been an overhaul on the roster, and the attitude and the energy and the commitment has shown through in a big way. I don't think this is a team that's going to let that happen. The thing I would worry about the most is maybe, like I said, underwhelming in a victory, more so than we should. A score where, we only score, 21 points and it ends up being 21-10 or something a lot less impressive. to me, the way that they've been playing, the way the Canes have been playing, putting 38 on Miami of Ohio. Okay, what are we going to see this season? What's this going to be? Boom. And then we saw the Texas A&M, more talent across the board than just about any team in the country. Again, like we spoke about what that means, coaching is its own thing, but Texas A&M was loaded with talent. And not breaking with those mistakes too and fighting back. And that's a big opponent. It's probably easier to get back off the mat and want to prove yourself in that, especially after losing them last season. But we know what this offense is capable of. I want to see something to the talent level that we have. I don't see any reason why we can't put over 50 points on them. I know that we're on the road, but I watched, Rutgers, 36 points. I think after putting 48 is a little underwhelming. And again, I discussed the reasons why already. It's a huge blowout win. The point spread is plenty, so no one cares. We moved up in the rankings. But last year we put 70 on Bethune, and no 2 years are created the same. Talk about play calling and everything else like we've said, but I don't see any reason why we can't up the average for our season in this game. And if Miami of Ohio scored 3 points against the Canes, Bethune scored 7. I got to see it. I got to think that it's going to be somewhere in that realm, 10 points max. I really think anything other than that, if you get to year 14, we really have to look at how did that 14 happen? I mean, is it a score the first drive and then is a score the last drive and there's nothing in between? That shows me that you maybe got caught off guard or there was some big play somewhere and then your team settled in and then you gave up a garbage touchdown, right? Not all touchdowns are created equal. So there's context that we need to consider, obviously, but I don't see any reason why we shouldn't hang at least 50 points considering what we've done. This isn't trying to drink any Kool-Aid. I'm just talking about the level of competition and really continue this the right way into ACC play before we have our bye week, I think is next week. And then we play Georgia Tech. So I think we should be able to do that, hang 50 on them and continue to just use this as a game to continue to sharpen the skills, get guys playing time. And like we've talked about, not get injured. Another storyline here too is Alan Hay. He transferred to Temple. So we're going to be playing an ex-Hurricane here on their defensive line. He's a starter there. He got what he wanted. So he's going to be able to play. And I know there's been some articles about, the return and being able to play against his old team. It's probably some excitement there. I don't think it's going to go the way that he hopes it goes, like we've talked about. But just another little side tangent that maybe not a lot of people are talking about. It is interesting though when you bring up Van Dyke, being an Eagles fan and playing at that stadium or seeing that going to that stadium. I mean, they play Lincoln Financial, right? So that's that. He has an opportunity to play on that field, and on some level, you got to think a guy who had offers from Miami and big schools like that probably considered going to Temple. Maybe not seriously, but if it's a school he was in a region or cared about, maybe he looked at them. So that's another thing that, is a cool perk, get to go beat this team. And not that he would have any animosity, but just another little storyline. I know we're reaching here, guys. It's just, this really shouldn't be a close game.
I do believe there's actually a kicker that was on our team that's on Temple also. I can't remember his name, but I do believe there's also another player, former Miami Hurricane, on the Temple roster. There's great articles that you can find out there. One I'm sure is coming from our buddy here, Phil, on Yardbarker. So guys, again, make sure you keep your eyes out for Yardbarker, and we'll link the article into the description here in our video. So keeping up with that.
Our boy Van Dyke and his ranked as the top quarterback in the country right now, guys. So pretty excited per Pro Football Focus, as well as obviously his Heisman candidacy is continuing to rise. So pretty cool. He's continuing to move up in the rankings and a good season and continuing to grow and watching us go up the rankings and him continuing to put up good yards, good stats is only going to help that, which is why a game like this is another important feather in the cap to continue to build on that, because those end numbers are going to be big. And, as silly as it sounds, those awards matter, right? Bringing a Heisman home for the first time since Toretta in 92 would be pretty cool. And I do want to say, Garrett, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do want to say, I think the Canes, we have a 14 game win streak against Temple. The last time we played them, I believe, was 2005. But let's be really real here for a second. Temple has given us two things: Al Golden, and then we took back Manny Diaz, which gave us I guess, some hype and fun, and we all love Diaz as a defensive coordinator, but we know things would be a little different right now if he was still the head coach. Would last year have happened as catastrophically? Who knows? But I don't think we would feel as confident as where we are now, especially with the recruiting classes. So those gifts has given us, I think we we owe a little bit back. So let's give them a gift of our own in the form of a I don't want to have no interest in embarrassing Temple. I don't have any ill will, but I'm just saying it's one of those things that's kind of like, let's go take some frustration out. Al Golden was great, right? Let's win this game big.
Yeah, I mean, there was like I said, some pretty good articles being written about the Temple team and who's talented on that roster. There's a couple linebackers I think got some good size. I think they have that's a receiver maybe that was somebody to partner up with their quarterback. But outside of that, let's not put anyone on the map. That's just certainly one of my biggest pet peeves is when we go and play a game and all of a sudden some guy has this career game against us, and then all of a sudden, that guy puts that onto a nice career going forward. So I'd like to see us again show all that the talent is on the Miami sideline going into this game. I don't expect to see anything different than that, but I certainly hope that I'm not made a fool in our next week's show, that we're not sitting here talking about how did we let all these things go wrong. So I mean, honestly, if our starters played the entire game against Bethune Cookman, they scored 35 points in the first half. So on average, we would have put up 70. And I doubt we give up that last touchdown if our starters were on the field. So it was a great performance last week. Yep. I do think going into this game, we have another great opportunity to, like you said, put feathers in the cap towards end of the season accolades. We definitely would love to see a quarterback, a high draft pick, whether it's first or second, third round. I mean, it's not the biggest deal, but we definitely need to have some NFL U action again, because that's been missing for a very long time. We certainly look like we have the guy that can finally be that. Things happen. We don't want to sit here and, crown him the Heisman Trophy. I don't want to sit here and even say he's first round pick, but he is playing at that level at this moment in time. So that's certainly what we want to see continue. And like you said earlier, if at the end of the day, nobody's going to go back and look at a great season in the stats and say, oh, what was against Temple and Bethune Cookman, they look at the season and it's 3,700 yards or, 4,000 yards. If you get to that level, it doesn't matter. You play the games that you're put on are on the schedule, perform well in every single one of those games, and those things will come, performing well and against bigger teams and better competition. But this is all towards end goals. And if you, want to have a great season at the end of the year, throw in some extra, I think the last thing we had was the Luke Rosa Award winner, and it was a great Borgal's brother that had that. But I mean, go back before that. It was a long, long time that we had gone without any substantial awards from the end of the season. So let's maybe who knows if we got the Jim Thorpe Award winner, maybe. Gosh, we would love to see a linebacker or the Nagurski Award winner, because we have guys that have that kind of talent. Let's keep winning. Those types of things come along with winning football teams, and let's start putting some hardware back in the on the mantle down there in Miami's facilities.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the biggest thing for me, this goes back to anything when you're talking about avoiding upsets and not worrying about it. We got to be to a point, you got to think positive. And obviously we've been beat down a lot with things. I get that, but you can't look at games like this and have any worry that you're going to, if you come out and you perform under expectations, like I've talked about a couple times already, maybe that's one thing, but it just can't be an option to lose. And I think a game like this, what's the reason that Middle Tennessee State game happens, right? It's you open the door and you let a team hang around, you let them get confidence and you let them think they can compete. And then there's no reason why they can't pull the game out. And that's what happens. If you let a team kind of get out and, you play flat and you let them get a couple touchdowns, you may still blow the game open, but you give them that confidence that you just don't need to deal with. You come out, you take care of business, and you kind of put your foot on the throat early. takes the wind out of the sails. Maybe they fight back a little bit, but generally they'll know, it's kind of you're overhyped, you're overmatched, and it's kind of going the way it's supposed to go. Losing big to a team that's ranked Power 5 program is not an indictment for Temple with where they are right now. But again, like you said, the games are played on the field. They got to go out. You got to win them. You got to take care of business and move on to the next one. We said feathers in the cap, continue to build on this, put up some good stats, and hopefully get us to a good, exciting season. And just think that at a 4-0, we're 1 win away from a game that we should win to matching our season win total from last year. So it's pretty exciting. Obviously, already this is far and away a better season. With that, though, guys, wrap up this edition of Canescast. We're excited to have you guys join us and excited to break down this game next week and kind of what we're looking at, maybe changes or, what's coming as we head into ACC play. So as always, guys, it's all about the U. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Yardbarker, and go Canes, guys.
And I'll close out here with Phil. Just a heads up, maybe we may wait till that week after this game since we do have a bye going into our Georgia Tech game. So if we get the next episode out here within our 1 week time frame we've been on, we're really trying to get an episode in between each game this season. So don't forget about us if we go ahead and put the next video up probably the week of the Georgia Tech game. Phil and I's schedules get kind of crazy. We love doing the show, so we really appreciate. We really have noticed that there's more and more views happening each week. So, guys, thank you so much for all you guys tuning in. If you're spreading the word, we've grown a couple of subscribers, so we really appreciate and love you guys, and we look forward to having more fun with you guys here each week that we have a game.
Absolutely.
So, thank you again, guys. It's all about the U.
Go Canes, guys.